Hi everyone and welcome to the IT Chronicles, coming to you from the Gartner Data Center conference in Las Vegas. I'm Kirstie Magowan, I'm here with my co-host Charlie Betz.
Kirstie.
And we're delighted to have Katherine Lord from Gartner here to talk to us today.
Thank you, glad to be here.
Well, Katherine, so you delivered a big keynote this morning on applications and infrastructure. For those of us in our audience who can't be here, can you give us a recap on your key points?
Sure, yeah, so it was a lot of fun actually. So we had a research analyst from the app side and myself representing I&O talking about how worlds are colliding and what I&O needs to think about in terms of how that change is going to impact their reality. So we explored, we led in with the discussion on how things are becoming much more dynamic. We're all about ecosystems now, platform thinking, moving away from the tried and true of what we thought we knew, and how that's leading us to a point where we need to change the way we work. Segued into the whole discussion around the core conflict many people are facing, right? The whole world of we all want to help the business be successful, but apps do that by going faster and enable, where I know it's all about governance, security, protection, going slower, risk mitigation, and how that core conflict is really dysfunctional. And tons of organizations still face this. And number one reason is the org chart. It's actually our worst enemy when you look at, we're using a 60-year-old construct for structuring ourselves and wondering why our digital transformation is not happening.
Right.
So we explored that, and then we talked about how DevOps can help break down some of that core conflict, right? Bringing more of the one team approach, one sandbox, and then we talked a bit about that. So it was good, it was thought-provoking. Didn't talk about technology at all, process, it was around culture, how we can all influence our culture and move forward. I think people get freaked out by culture. They think, that's bigger than me. Like, I can't do anything about it, so I'm going to zone out. But not recognizing that culture change starts with each person changing their perspective, their mindset.
It has to be at that granular level. It has to start from each person.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly leadership needs to set the stage, but there's a grassroots movement that is very powerful as well.
We've had a few interesting discussions here over the last couple of days about just where service management is going, and I mean you've come up through service management as I have, and basically all of us have spent time in that, and it has changed dramatically. I mean, we had one person on earlier who said, well, perhaps it's dying as we know it. But where do you see service management heading at the moment?
It's interesting. There's definitely a school of thought right now that when they hear ITSM, they think, oh, that's a legacy, that's old school. And for somebody that lived and breathed it for 20 years, like, oh, it hurts. Right? It's like, that was I paid my bills for a long time. I don't think it's dying per se, but it's changing. And I think, and this is nothing new, right? Take the IT off of it, call it service management, whatever it is, right? Every business is an IT business. So I think it's again around the ecosystems. The walls are blurring, they're coming down, and we just function more as a unit in terms of the business versus IT and the business, right? So I think a lot of service management concepts are just taking into the broader business sense. So that's kind of how I see that.
Yeah, I mean, service management always talked about delivering outcomes, and as you listen to the current product-centric and design-centric thinking coming out of the Agile community, what are they talking about? Outcomes.
Yes, exactly.
I think we really got bogged down in the process focus of service management. I think is where things went off the rails
I think
a little bit.
We sort of got to a stage where it was process for the sake of process rather than process for the sake of the outcomes that we were trying to get.
Well, and there's still a school of thought. When you say ITSM, a lot of people still think idle, right? And it's like, no. Like to me, service management was like a pot of soup, right? And your recipe for your soup is going to be so varied depending on who you are. You could have bits of lean in there, you could have TQM, you could have CSI, you could have bits of idle, you could have HDI best practices, you could have tons of stuff, and it's about your journey to optimize and do what you need to do.
And service management, I think part of our job is actually to educate people that it is an individual recipe. That you don't, I mean, as a consultant, I've had people come to me and say, I want you to come and do an ITIL implementation, and I say, no, you don't. That's not what you want.
No, definitely not.
Now, as we look at going back to the organization and cultural transformation, I'd love to get your perspective on what you're seeing in the industry on I mean, we've all now, I think most people have heard about the Amazon 2 pizza teams and the idea that work is done effectively by small, tightly focused, cross-functional, collaborative people. There's a staffing and a workforce issue, though, kind of looming with, you know, just the makeup of your traditional I&O versus application. I mean, do we have the right staffing mix? Do we have the right staffing model to support these small teams? I think it's an interesting question. And, you know, where do all the, you know, how do we rearrange the organization? And what problems are we going to see if we go to these microservices teams at scale? Sure, it's working for, you know, Netflix and Amazon, but I'm concerned that some of the scaling issues really haven't been fully thought through.
I mean, the whole talent management skills and capabilities is huge, right? And I did a presentation yesterday where I basically said, if there's only one takeaway from this presentation, you must go back and think about this, because it's such a fundamental risk for organizations, right? Yeah. As they start to move more into the cloud, for example, and become more of a service broker, that mindset and that way of working changes the need for the types of skills and capabilities that you have. And a lot of people don't think about that. They adopt new technology, new ways of working, and don't think about maybe the legacy people they're dragging behind, and they're not setting them up to be successful either.
Right.
So there's a big potential gap coming there. I think the other thing that's interesting to observe is as we move more into those feature teams or those cross-functional teams, we're talking potentially more about a T-shaped kind of person, right? Versus I have a security expert, I have this, now I have a security expert who also knows a lot about release tools, this, and this. So we have a little more of a generalist play, which for many IT leaders, that's scary.
So, it is.
Whoa, wait a second, do those people exist? Or where do I put them in my silos? Like, what do I do? But I think this becomes a bigger part of the conversation, is a different type of persona to fulfill some of those roles.
I just heard somebody talking now about hashtag shape professionals, where you have multiple verticals and multiple horizontals. I'm like, okay, go too far down that road and there's something called a purple squirrel that HR managers talk about. You know, so
Well, but this is, to that point, this is the stuff that scares a lot of people. Like, we're messing with some of the core DNA of our organization now in terms of how we've been structured for years. Like, that's very scary to a lot of leaders, and there's often a hesitancy to relinquish that control and be open to these changes.
Being open is such a big part of it.
Open to serendipity.
Yes, and being happy to break down those silos, because as you said, there's people who fit in more than one of those areas now. You're not looking at those very tight specialties anymore. They are far more broad and encompassing than they were before.
Which inevitably, then you start to get into people who are scared about their job security. So then that starts to manifest in all sorts of really interesting behaviors and morale issues, because people think, am I not going to be relevant? Do I not know enough? Are they going to let me go? So that just becomes a big
it closes back to culture. I mean, they have Google Project Aristotle, psychological safety. If you're fearing for your job, that's not a good precondition for psychological safety. So you're not embarking on the DevOps cultural transformation at that point.
Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy day to come and chat to us.
It was great. It's about time, you know, the infamous podcast. So I made it.
Wonderful. Well, it has definitely been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katherine.
Likewise.